Welcome, welcome to my ex dirty secrets.
The sound of her laughter didn't belong in my house anymore. It was that bright, melodic kind that once pulled me out of the darkest days. Yet tonight, it scraped against my ribs like glass. I stood in the dim hallway, hidden in the soft flicker of candlelight spilling from the dining room, staring at Mia as she poured wine into 2 glasses. The man sitting across from her wore a tailored navy suit, the kind that screamed money and ego. His watch gleamed beneath the warm glow of the chandelier. Cartier, gold too bold to be subtle. His hand brushed hers casually as she leaned closer, whispering something that made him grin like he owned the room. That table, our table, was the same one I'd built with my own hands in the early years of our marriage. I could still feel the sandpaper under my palms, the sawdust that clung to my shirt as she laughed and told me it would never look store-bought. And now, that same table was the stage for her betrayal. I should have walked in, confronted them, demanded an explanation. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed in the shadows, my hand resting on the cool wall, forcing myself to breathe through the ache clawing at my chest. Because love doesn't always end in fire or fury. It ends in silence. I met Mia 8 years ago at a coffee shop. She was a whirlwind, laughing too loud, moving too fast, and spilling her drink on my laptop in the first 10 seconds of meeting me. I should have been irritated, but she had that thing, that magnetic pull. She apologized 100 times, scribbled her number on a napkin, and told me she'd buy me a new laptop if I let her make it up to me. I never cashed in that promise. Instead, I married her. Back then, we didn't care about money. I wasn't the man I am now. I was just Ethan, an engineer with wild ideas and a struggling startup that most investors ignored. Mia didn't marry wealth. She married potential. She used to say, "I don't care if we live in a 1-bedroom apartment, as long as we have love." But love, I've learned, has an expiration date, especially when success finally arrives and changes the air around you. The company took off 5 years later. Overnight, I became a name whispered in rooms I'd never been allowed in before. Tech magazines called me the quiet innovator. I poured my soul into that empire. Late nights, sleepless weeks, endless sacrifice. And somewhere along the way I lost her. Or maybe she lost herself. Started with small things. Late returns from girls' nights. Unexplained smiles at her phone. The new perfume she wore but never around me. I wanted to believe it was nothing. God, I wanted to believe that. But tonight, belief wasn't enough. I slipped my phone from my pocket and snapped a photo of them. Not to expose her, not yet, but to remind myself I wasn't imagining it. That this wasn't paranoia. This was betrayal in high definition. I turned and left before either of them noticed. The city air hit me like a slap. Cold, damp, unkind. The night swallowed me as I walked, aimless, my breath visible in the October chill. Every step echoed with the weight of what I'd seen. I ended up at the marina, where I often went when I needed to think. The water was calm, black as ink, and the reflections of city lights shimmered like broken promises. I leaned on the railing, the phone heavy in my hand. I opened the photo again. Her eyes, once filled with warmth, were lit with something else. Excitement, desire, freedom. For the first time, I wasn't sure if I missed her or the version of her that existed before the money. Before the expectations. Before me. That night I didn't go home. The next morning I returned quietly. Her car was gone. The smell of wine lingered faintly in the air, along with a faint trace of his cologne. I stood in the living room scanning the evidence. 2 wine glasses in the sink, a half-burned candle on the counter, her lipstick stain on one of the glasses. Picked it up. Red. Bold. The color she used to wear when she wanted my attention. Now it belonged to someone else. I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked to the piano in the corner and sat down. My fingers hovered over the keys, but no sound came out. The silence was deafening. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Mia. Dinner went late. Don't wait up next time, okay? Love you. I stared at those 2 words. Love you. They looked like a cruel joke. a script she'd memorized to keep up appearances. I typed back, "Sure. Hope you had fun." She didn't reply. That day I made a decision. Not to confront her yet, but to find out who he was. Because betrayal demands proof, and revenge requires patience. It didn't take long. When you're a billionaire, you have access to people who can make the invisible visible. By that evening I had a name. Lucas Grant, a hedge fund manager, 38. Drove an Aston Martin. Known for charm, arrogance, and reckless ambition. The kind of man who mistakes confidence for character. He was successful but not powerful. At least not compared to me. The irony. His firm had recently become one of the many small investment arms partnered under my holding company, Caldwell Group, which meant Lucas Grant worked for me. My jaw tightened as I stared at the screen, the report glowing under the office light. The universe really did have a cruel sense of humor. Mia had traded her husband for one of my employees. I didn't sleep that night. Every memory of her played on repeat. The first kiss in the rain, the night she stayed up with me when I was broke, the way she whispered, "We're in this together," after my first investor rejected me. And now, I was watching that same woman fall for another man because he looked like success. The irony burned. I walked into my company headquarters the next morning with one goal in mind. See Lucas face to face. My assistant, Claire, greeted me at the door with her usual bright efficiency. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell. You have a meeting at 10 with the executive investment partners, including a new addition, Lucas Grant. Should I confirm?" I smiled faintly. "Definitely confirm." At 10 sharp, the boardroom filled with chatter. Executives exchanged handshakes, presentations flickered to life, and the smell of coffee and expensive cologne mixed in the air. Then he walked in. Lucas Grant. Tall, sharp-featured, confident, wearing the same navy suit I'd seen him in last night. The bastard smiled like the world bent for him. He took a seat across the table, completely unaware that the man sitting opposite him was the husband of the woman he'd been with just hours ago. He introduced himself with the smugness of someone used to admiration. "Lucas Grant. Pleasure to be part of the Caldwell family." I leaned back, studying him. "Welcome aboard, Lucas. I've heard a lot about you." He grinned. "All good things, I hope. Depends who you ask." I smiled lightly. "But I'm sure we'll get along just fine." Throughout the meeting, I barely heard a word. My focus stayed locked on him. The subtle smirk when he talked, the overuse of flattery, the way he name-dropped wealth like currency for validation, was almost amusing. He had no idea he'd walked into the lion's den. By the end of the meeting, I extended my hand. "Good work today, Lucas. Let's talk privately sometime. I'd like to know more about your investments." "Of course, sir," he said, his tone eager. "It'd be an honor." I held his gaze. "I'm sure it will be." That night Mia came home late again. She smelled of the same cologne I'd noticed before. "Long day?" I asked from the couch, keeping my voice casual. She froze slightly, then nodded, dropping her purse on the counter. "Yeah. Emily wanted to grab dinner, and then we stopped by a friend's place. You know how she gets." I forced a smile. "Of course. Did you have fun?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second, just enough for me to notice before replying, "Yeah. It was nice to catch up." Her phone buzzed on the counter. A message popped up before she could grab it. "Lucas G. had a great night. You looked incredible. Same time tomorrow." The air froze. Her eyes flicked to me, then to the phone. "It's just a friend," she said quickly, reaching for it. Understood. Slowly. Only. My pulse was steady, but my voice wasn't. "A friend, huh? Ethan. Don't lie to me, Mia." Her lips parted, her face paling, but no words came out. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. I turned away, heading toward the door. "I have an early meeting tomorrow. Ethan, please." But I didn't stop. I walked out before she could twist the truth into something palatable. That night, I sat in my car outside our house, staring at the lights through the windshield. My reflection in the glass looked foreign, cold, distant, unrecognizable. I thought betrayal would feel like heartbreak, but it didn't. Felt like clarity. Because the woman sleeping in my bed wasn't the one who fell in love with me years ago. She was someone else now. Someone who chased wealth until she couldn't see the difference between illusion and reality. And I'd decided. She was about to learn the price of betrayal. Not through anger. Not through shouting. But through silence and power. The next morning I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The air in my penthouse suite felt heavier, sharper, as though the walls themselves were waiting for what was coming. My reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window stared back at me. Tailored suit, controlled expression, calm surface over a storm. I had spent my entire life mastering control. Over my company, my emotions, my image. But love. Love was the one thing I never thought I'd need to manage like a hostile takeover. And yet here I was. At 9:30 sharp, my assistant buzzed through. "Mr. Caldwell, Lucas Grant is here to see you. Send him in." The door opened, and Lucas walked in wearing the same confident smile from the boardroom. He looked polished, his tie precise, his cologne strong, his handshake firm. "Morning, sir," he said, settling into the chair opposite mine. "You wanted to talk investments." I watched him for a moment. He didn't even flinch. He had no idea. "Yes," I said evenly. "I wanted to discuss a personal portfolio. Something I've been developing quietly." His eyebrows lifted. "Personal?" He nodded. "You see, Lucas, I like to know who's managing my assets. Both financial." I paused. "And otherwise." He chuckled, mistaking the edge in my voice for humor. "That's smart. Trust is everything in this business." Trust. The word almost made me laugh. I slid open the top drawer and pulled out a folder, placing it on the table between us. Inside were a few photos, nothing more. Just enough. His smirk faded the second he looked down. His jaw clenched. His fingers froze on the page. It was the photo I'd taken that night, him and Mia at my dining table. The candlelight. The wine. Her hand over his. His lips parted slightly, the color draining from his face. "Where did you?" "Your job gives you access to sensitive information," I said calmly. "So you understand discretion is critical to survival." He didn't answer. "I assume this is the part where you try to explain," I continued. "Or deny. Or beg." He swallowed hard. "Look, I didn't know she was my wife." I finished for him. He went silent. I leaned forward, folding my hands on the desk. "You should have done your research. Because the woman you thought was your ticket to luxury was already living inside the palace. You just didn't realize who owned it." He tried to recover, fumbling for composure. "Ethan, this wasn't. You don't get to say my first name." The words came out sharp, cold. "You'll resign. Today. And if you so much as breathe near her again, I'll make sure you never work in finance again. Do we understand each other?" He nodded stiffly, his throat tight. "Good," I said. "Now get out." The door closed behind him, and the silence that followed was suffocating. I should have felt satisfied. I had the upper hand, the power, the proof. But all I felt was empty. Because even though I'd humiliated him, I hadn't stopped the ache that kept throbbing underneath my composure. Betrayal doesn't end when the betrayer falls. It ends when you stop loving them. And I wasn't sure I had. That night I came home early. Mia was in the kitchen, wearing one of my shirts, humming softly as she stirred something on the stove. Like nothing had happened, like our world wasn't burning beneath us. She turned when she saw me. "Hey, you're home early." I thought. "I met Lucas today." The wooden spoon slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor. For a moment she just stared at me, frozen. Then her shoulders straightened, her expression flickering between panic and defiance. "Ethan, I can explain." I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "I'm listening." "It wasn't," she began, but the lie caught in her throat. "It wasn't supposed to happen. You were never around anymore. You were always working, always distracted. I felt invisible. There it was, the justification, the script. And that made sleeping with someone else reasonable. I asked quietly. Her eyes filled with tears. No. But it made me lonely. Lonely. That word hit harder than I expected. Because the truth was, I had been distant. I had poured everything into building something for us, not realizing I was losing her in the process. I wanted you to notice me again, she said, voice trembling. Lucas made me feel seen. He listened. He listened because he wanted what I had, I said softly. And you gave it to him. Her face crumpled. Please, Ethan. I made a mistake. I ended it. Swear. I realized what I was throwing away. I love you. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the image of her smiling across that candlelit table burned in my mind like a brand that would never fade. You love the version of me that fits your story, I said. The man who worships you, who gives you everything. But you didn't love me when I stopped being convenient. Her tears fell freely now. Please, we can fix this. I looked around the kitchen. The wine glasses, the soft lighting, the scent of her perfume still lingering in the air. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Like a movie set built on lies. I already fixed it, I said quietly. Lucas doesn't work for me anymore. And neither do you. Her breath hitched. What? I've spoken to my lawyer. The divorce papers will be delivered in the morning. Her eyes widened. You're ending this. Just like that. No, I said, meeting her gaze. You ended it. I'm just making it official. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. She sank onto the stool, trembling, her hands pressed to her face. I wanted to comfort her. God, every part of me wanted to hold her, to erase the pain in her voice. But love built on betrayal isn't love. It's self-destruction. So I turned and walked toward the door. She whispered behind me, her voice cracked and small. He said you were just some tech guy. That you were too focused on work to notice what you had. He said he could give me more. Stop. Of course he did. I looked back over my shoulder, meeting her tear-streaked face. Tell him next time he wants to compare himself to some tech guy. He should check who signs his paycheck. Her lips parted, realization dawning. What do you mean? Lucas worked for me, Mia, I said. You replaced your husband with a man who begged me for approval in the same breath he was kissing you. She went pale. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You knew. I knew, I said simply. And I let him dig his own grave. You just helped him finish it. The silence that followed was brutal. Her tears turned to quiet sobs. I didn't know. Then please. I didn't know. I walked to the door and paused with my hand on the handle. That's the problem, Mia. You never wanted to know. You just wanted to believe whatever made you feel good in the moment. And with that I left. The following months were a blur of papers, signatures, and lawyers. The tabloids had their fun, of course. Rumors about Caldwell's glamorous ex-wife and her affair. I ignored them. Mia tried to reach out once, then twice. Then stopped. Lucas vanished from the city not long after. His name never appeared in any firm again. I made sure of that, not out of revenge but as a lesson. Some men learn integrity only after losing everything. As for me, I worked, built, healed. But some nights I'd catch myself driving past the marina, the place I went that first night after seeing her with him. I'd sit there in the dark, watching the reflection of the city lights ripple across the water. And I'd remember her laughter, the warmth of her touch, the way her eyes once looked at me before success distorted the meaning of love. People think power protects you from heartbreak. Doesn't. Just gives you the means to hide it better. 6 months later, at a charity gala, I saw her again. She looked radiant. Different, quieter, humbler. Our eyes met across the room, and she hesitated before walking over. Ethan, she said softly. You look well. So do you. There was a pause. The music filled the space between us like an apology neither of us could give. I wanted to thank you, she said finally. For not destroying me. You could've, but you didn't. I smiled faintly. That's not who I am. She nodded, eyes glistening. You were always better than me. No, I said, glancing toward the crowd of glittering guests. Just different. She opened her mouth, then stopped. He left, she said quietly. Lucas. Turns out. He only loved my reflection in your light. I know, I said. That's what parasites do. Her lips trembled. Do you still hate me? I looked at her for a long moment, then shook my head. No, Mia. Hate requires caring. I just don't feel anything anymore. Her tears spilled then, silent, fragile. I'm sorry. I believe you, I said. But sorry doesn't rebuild what you burned. And before she could respond, I turned and walked away. Outside, the night air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. I looked up at the skyline, the empire I had built, the life I had rebuilt. Love had once been my weakness. Now it was my greatest teacher. Because I'd learned that betrayal doesn't destroy you. It reveals you. And in losing her, I'd found myself again.